The one I'll always start with is the idea of absolute responsibility and as opposed to responsibility. So responsibility is usually about shame or blame. So who is to fault? Who is the cause? Who do we shame? Who do we throw out of our tribe or community? Who's at fault? And that's really a kind of a toxic version of responsibility. And what a real empowered leaders practice is absolute responsibility. And absolute responsibility is owning the situation independent of who caused it. It is spending minimal amount of time on blame or shame. You might look at the causes and how you got there, but then you own the situation. And we cannot change what we do not own. So everything starts with owning the situation so you can actually have the power to change it.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by ConsultWebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that has cookies baking in the oven so our listeners feel cozy. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community with the latest in legal marketing and law firm development. I'm Jake Sanders. He's Paul Julius. Paul, those cookies, man, smell good.
Yeah, we're trying something a little different today. It's oatmeal cookies, but instead of raisins, we're using craisins.
It's like the safest flex ever.
I'm telling you.
We could have put something else in there real fun, but
walnuts.
No. Oh, gross. You like nuts in the cookie? I can't stand it. I think it's clandestine and I don't appreciate it. I think you need to tell me what's going on.
It's like sponsored by the American Dental Association.
Well, yeah, surprise.
Bury some walnuts in there.
Yeah. Speaking of surprises, let's open up the oven and let them in on the good smells that are coming their way on the show today.
On the show today, we're talking about leadership, ownership, and empowerment. First, with an article from Inc.com, and then we talk to entrepreneur, leadership development expert, keynote speaker, and best-selling author Peter Montoya. And then we make our guest answer the same 5 questions we make every guest answer, with 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The article today is entitled 6 Disciplines of Leadership That Inspire Ownership by Gene Hammett. He's a speaker, strategic advisor for growth, and host of the Grow Think Tank podcast. I'll start with the beginning. Paul found this, and then I'll hand it over to him, and then we can exchange the hot takes. Ownership, says Gene, is the feeling of owning the results. When employees feel ownership for what they are doing, they go beyond just taking responsibility. They bring innovation to the job. They don't turn off their brains at 5 o'clock. With big growth goals, how do you motivate employees to take ownership of those goals? This was good. Inc.com is good.
Ownership in all caps.
Big time.
How do you motivate employees to take ownership?
Was that not you? I thought that was emphasis added by the author.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I didn't do it.
Dang. That's pretty intense. So Gene's serious about ownership. So explain some of these things. There's a list here, obviously.
Oh, you know, it's been a while since I've had one of these. So I've been ready to go. So it says, leaders told me to spark that sense of ownership. They tried the following 6 practices. Number 1, they create a one-of-a-kind brand. Number 2, they include people from all levels when crafting vision. Number 3, they embrace radical transparency. Number 4, they empower others to take risks. Number 5, they understand employees' personal goals. Number 6, they allow employees to be brand ambassadors. So I'll tell you real quick.
Yeah.
I'll go first here.
Yeah, man.
I think this list is interesting, but I think the only ones that really matter are number 5 and number 6. Understand employees' personal goals and allow employees to be brand ambassadors.
Interesting.
All that other stuff, I do not ever see companies doing that. It's nice. Maybe they
like
might
radical transparency. And...
Yeah, that's everyone who tries that ends up being like, yeah, that was a bad idea. Include people from all levels when crafting a vision. I mean, that's okay, but now you're starting to have creativity by committee,
Hmm.
uh, project management by committee. I think that's a dangerous. Um, that's like the junkyard of of good ideas.
It's
Um,
interesting that these leaders are talking about how they empowered their contributors at their work,
mhm.
employees and stuff, how giving them ownership, radical transparency. Like, what does that mean? What do these euphemisms mean? Are you saying you're honest, or I just tell them like it is, or I'm really radical with my feedback as I shoot them out of the sky? Um, or a one of a kind brand. It's really hard and very intangible. And I I can appreciate where Gene's coming from,
Yeah.
but I could also see how this advice may be misaligned with how things get done in business settings. And Peter sort of breaks out in his interview this idea of empowerment and this idea of hero leaders and how some myths around these are really sort of disserving us because it's it creates these euphemisms, I think, where you're not clear on what the leader is doing, where the vision is, what the mission is. And so you have pockets of things that look like ownership or autonomy, but actually are just isolated places of activity that don't connect to the common place. And I think maybe ownership is great, but connectivity of ownership and bringing everybody into the same idea and not to your idea of bringing everybody into the idea creation of it, but into
Mhm.
the execution of the vision, and making everybody feel like they have a piece of it. Then they'd want to own it. I think, that's what I would say, maybe. But you're saying that the personal responsibility and goals are the way that maybe leaders could activate folks to.
Well, I mean, you're looking at what they don't want to turn off their brains at 5 o'clock. Well, what's going to be most important? A one of a kind brand or personal goals and
Mm,
giving people, you know, the sense that they
can develop
are a part
themselves.
and can do something that aligns with the company as
I hear
well,
you.
that the
Right.
company is, and this idea of a one of a kind brand somehow relates to them.
I hear you. I
I
hear
think
you.
that's the biggest problem. There's and
Resonance. Yeah.
yeah, and there's also, I think there's a part of this too where company size plays a lot in these different things. If you have 600 people, it's going to be, obviously you're going to have to bring in some people from different teams or whatever. But you just can't be transparent with,
Right.
and that's when they talk about transparency. I don't think they're like, listen,
That's.
man,
I think it's
we
a
opened up the
euphemism.
books,
I'm not
you know,
100% sure what that means. And
so
plus, showing someone books that they don't understand
yeah,
doesn't mean
well,
anything. Well, I like your spreadsheet. Don't know what it means.
yeah. Well, they're talking about if your leadership team has developed the habit of many closed door meetings that never get communicated to the masses, it
Mm.
reduces the feelings of leadership. That's what it says. Um,
Yes, I totally hear that. I hear that.
so, but I think there has to be kind of a balance there, and
Yeah.
I'm not too sure. Um, everybody knowing what's going on, I still don't know how that's going to make some kind of connection. So I
Yeah.
think I like the concept, and I mean, we hear it a lot. Well, my door's always open. My door's
Hmm.
always open. You can hit me up anytime. Um,
Is that true?
that always ends up as being a thing that's nice to say, but is difficult to do in practice.
Well, and really
So,
what it is, it says, well, why didn't you come? My door was
mhm.
open.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah. It really, that's a great point. It shifts the onus of ownership
well,
onto the person. You have to be a seeker,
and
you
look,
know?
we're battering around the idea, which is the reason why we should go to Peter's talk, because he talks about responsibility,
Yes.
absolute responsibility. And this idea of ownership is more of a blaming thing. Like, well, who owns this? I hope somebody owns this. And why don't you own this? You know what? Who's responsible here?
Yeah.
And that changes the conversation. Because now instead of me owning just a piece of this pie or, I'm just in charge of the apples. I love this pie, but I'm an apple guy, and someone's a crust person, it's a very isolated thing that doesn't create the cohesion when responsibility is the core argument. And if you can find someone who exacts this feeling of responsibility themselves, then everybody else, can see them falling in line with this, this leader who has the it factor, that isn't about shaming or blaming, but which is about like a virtuous cycle that you set, that you do own these results, but you're responsible, for the outcomes, ultimately.
Yep.
So Peter's here. He's we're batting around these ideas like a ping pong on a table, and you can watch us and play along at home, because it's Paul, it's Jake, it's Peter Montoya, it's Consult Webs, it's Lost Podcast. It's all coming up.
Let's go.
Lawson continues. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Any lawyer looking to grow their business online can generate more leads from their website by hiring Consult Webs. After working with lawyers exclusively since 1999, we've tested thousands of web designs and marketing strategies, so we know what flips and what flops. For more information, visit www.consultwebs.com today.
Let's head over to the interview.
There are gifted speakers, there are best-selling authors, and there are successful entrepreneurs, but rarely do you find all three in one person. Peter Montoya is that rare exception. A thought leader, skilled orator, powerful coach, and seasoned entrepreneur, Peter has traveled the globe educating thousands and revolutionizing how organizations develop high-performance teams. And now he brings this heat to the Lawson Podcast. Peter, welcome aboard.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for showing up, man. So let's get towards this concept of leadership. We're talking about leaders a lot. We're following some of their advice. Sometimes we have to be our own leaders. Can you just wrap a little bit on leadership? Why are you so passionate? What's the definition for you? I know it's a compound question. Go for it.
So leadership to me has fundamentally changed in the last 30 or 40 years. When I was I'm 50 years old, in the 1970s, when I first started looking at leadership, leaders was largely a top-down activity. The person at the top did all the strategy, the vision, and dictating and thinking for everyone in the organization. And some of the models for that were kind of like Mr. Spacely, always yelling, "You're fired," at George Jetson, or Full Metal Jacket, with the drill sergeant saying, "If I wanted to know your opinion, I'd give it to you."
Correct.
And it was always this bullying way of getting people motivated.
Wow.
And leadership has fundamentally changed now. So before, the goal of leadership was to motivate by fear. And today, leadership is all about, the primary job of a leader today is leadership development. It is to turn all of your people actually into leaders, which creates a force multiplier for your organization.
Of course you'd want that. So here's a question really fast. If everybody is a leader, everybody thinks they're Luke Skywalker, is that the best place to be? I mean, if everybody feels like they're the leader, I just wish people would listen to me.
Right?
Do you think that there's a problem there?
So, our vision of leadership is a heroic style of leadership. It is the Luke Skywalker. It is the, Han Solo. It is, Indiana Jones.
It's Moana.
Right.
It's all of these, yes.
It's this one person who swoops in and saves the day. And the truth is, in reality, that's what our mythology is. That's what our visuals are. But in reality, that's not how things get done today. So you might have somebody out in front of the band kind of acting as your conductor, but the truth is you now have to have a force of leaders who are all empowered, who know what the mission is, who take complete and total responsibility for their area, and then know how to make decisions to move their part of the ball down the field. It's now the leader of leaders method.
So it seems like it's really reliant on strategy and making sure you can delegate and break apart your vision to empower the underlings, which you don't want to call them underlings. Speak to this power empowerment dynamic. Like,
oh yeah,
how are you?
First of all, the word we don't use the word underlings anymore. The word now is
sorry.
The word is contributors. So every single person who works for an organization is no longer a cog in a machine. They're no longer a spoke. They're no longer a role player. They're no longer replaceable. They are now a conscious contributor, not only contributing their time, but their heart, their creativity, and their passion. All right, so let's talk to the idea of power. I'm going to ask both of you this question. Do you want more power? And then why or why not? Do you want more power? Why or why not?
Paul?
He stumped already.
Like at work or just in general?
In general.
In general, do I want more power? I think I would have to say yes. I think I would have to say yes. But it's probably not the traditional type of power. Like I don't want to control people or control things. It's more the power to control my reaction to things and to control the circumstances that I'm in.
Excellent.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say power is sort of defined by what the struggle is or the rope that you're tugging on. So I would say changing my definition of power to fit the dynamics, that would seem like true power in my head.
Very good. So what's interesting is I am, an empowerment speaker. I get brought into organizations to empower people. I ask this question of the audience, and most people give answers like yours. Well, maybe, I think so, I don't know. So leaders are trying to empower organization, and most people don't even know what it means. But
they don't want it. It's like, I don't want the heavy. I think Paul's speaking to the idea is like, maybe I don't want to go to the sword and the stone and yank it out because then I got to be the king. Right?
That's true. Right.
Maybe I don't want that.
I'm going to give you both a definition of power right now, and I think it's going to instantly change your mind. Power is the ability to achieve intended results. So no matter what you want in life, whether you want to make more money, advance your career, lead your division to success, or maybe you just want to not be in pain anymore, like in chronic pain. Maybe you want a better relationship with your spouse. That is an act of power. So everything that you want that you do not have is all by increasing your power, which is the ability to achieve intended results. The reason most people have a negative association with power is they think of some guy in a corner office who's some kind of fat cat taking advantage of the people and more or less abusing their power. And I'm not advocating that.
What are some of the key sources of leadership power and of these things that maybe people who are at the top of the organization should be tapping into?
That's a great question. So we kind of look at people and go, well, that person is a leader and they have the quote unquote it factor. What creates that it factor? One I'll always start with is the idea of absolute responsibility and as opposed to responsibility. So responsibility is usually about shame or blame. So who is to fault? Who's the cause? Who do we shame? Who do we throw out of our tribe or community? Who's at fault? And that's really a kind of a toxic version of responsibility. And what a real empowered leaders practice is absolute responsibility. And absolute responsibility is owning the situation independent of who caused it. It is spending minimal amount of time on blame or shame. You might look at the causes and how you got there, but then you own the situation. And we cannot change what we do not own. So everything starts with owning the situation so you can actually have the power to change it.
I feel like I'm at the first step of maybe 12 more steps here. that chances are I can smell the coffee and I can see the desperation and I'm like going out for a smoke break. So you're talking about the key sources of leadership power. And so how would somebody grab that? Here's a question. How do you let go of blame?
Great question.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, which is actually a virtuous cycle. And the more you start setting up your mind to realize that you are the cause of everything in your life and owning the outcomes independent of who caused it, it kind of starts reciprocating. It starts happening faster and faster. So first of all, I live in Southern California, and if you drive on the freeways in Southern California, number one, you're going to be in traffic, and number two, you're going to be cut off. It's just going to happen. And the responsible person goes, okay, well, who could cut me off, and I'm going to extract my revenge, and they're going to, blame this person for, whatever they were doing for being an idiot driver on the roadway. Right. And the absolute responsible person goes, you know what, that's just the conditions of the roadway, and those things are going to happen independent, and they just don't spend any time on it. So a great deal of absolute responsibility is more or less owning the situation without blame or shame, and also either forgiving or forgetting. They don't spend a lot of time ruminating on all the things that are done wrong. There's no doubt about it. Everyone on the planet has been wrong. There's no question about it that you have right and reason to be hurt by the people who have hurt you, and there are people who have done you wrong. There's no question about it. But the absolute responsible person just kind of moves on from that. They say, so what? Now what? So what that happened? Now what am I going to do with it? And they carry themselves forward.
Well, it seems like grief and aggrievement and grudges carry a lot of people forward when they actually hold you back from claiming a little piece of that leadership role. How would a leader, it's not about role modeling or cheerleading to create high-performing organizations. Like, how does a leader kind of bring this out of people?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. And I can give you a personal story. So I've been an entrepreneur now for 25 years. And when I first started with my organization, I was a fantastic producer. I got into my office at 6 o'clock in the morning. I left at 6 o'clock at night. And for 12 hours, I was at my desk and or doing what I needed to do to move the company forward. Mm-hmm. I was doing sales. I was doing marketing. I was doing speeches. I was writing content. And then I started hiring people, and I brought people in, and I basically said, here's your job, go do this job. And I still spent 99.9% of my time doing personal production, and maybe 1/10 of my time focusing on developing my people. And my organization never got above my own ability to produce. It wasn't until 20 years into my career that I realized, the primary job of a leader is not personal production. The primary job of a leader is leadership development. Then I changed all of my time, and I spent 60 to 70% of my time working with my people, turning them into leaders, which means three things. Number one, they're perfectly aligned with the mission. The reason the guy at the top is snapping his fingers high energy is he's aligned with the mission. Everybody else might be going, well, I don't know what the mission is. Do I really care about the mission? What's my why? Mm-hmm. Number two is that authority. I made sure that when I was at the beginning of my career, I kept all the authority, all the decision-making ability, and therefore everyone always came to me, and I got to feel really good because I was a guru. I had all the answers. Yes. But then as I got along my career, I didn't want that anymore, and I started pushing down as much decision-making authority to everybody else in the organization. And the third thing I did is I started teaching people mastery. Whatever the mastery of their subject matter was and or decision-making, I started training my people. And now I had a force multiplier. I had 20 people growing the organization instead of just me.
Mm-hmm. And those people now, you are able to give them that same responsibility. It's hard, I guess. It's hard sometimes because I really do believe, and I know Jake and I have had many conversations about just ownership and owning things. Like, even when you're talking about, I got cut off in traffic, and people are like, well, how can I, own that? How can I respect that? I mean, it's like, it was your decision to be on the road. I mean, there's, seriously.
You know what the conditions are.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen just yesterday.
Yeah, come on.
Sure. And the thing is, but I think a deeper thing, there's a deeper sense of serenity that comes out of that when you realize that most people, it's not about you. You're just a passing car in their life. They don't care. They're not going to give it any more thought, and you empower it by giving it that attention. So when you kind of break away from those things, but that's difficult to do in an organization. It's like you say, when you are the entrepreneur, when you're the guy at the top, I'm calling the shots. I do this, I do that. But if you're middle manager or you're trying to, maybe excel and move up, do you have any advice on how someone can take ownership of that and that maybe that career trajectory at that company, as opposed to waiting for someone to give it to them?
Yeah. So the most important question that anybody in an organization should be asking is this, what is our mission? What is our objective? And how can I get more aligned with it? And if you're a middle manager, you should be asking that of your top management. What is our mission? What's our objective? How can I be a better part of it? Number two, how can I have more ownership? And they're always asking for more decision-making ability. So if you go into your boss's office and you've got a problem and you say, boss, I want to talk this problem through with you. I want to understand how you think about it. So next time I am faced with this problem, I know how to solve it. And then number 3, you're always asking for more training. So you never reject free training. You're always asking for more training. And those 3 things will demonstrate to your upper management that you are a leader. And most likely, by the way, will start taking a page out of your book for seeing how you lead.
So let's get back to the idea of branding. I think there's a bit of there's a slimy coat around personal branding and marketing that a lot of lawyers, in a lot of survey polls, they don't advertise. They think TV lawyers are just dreck. Everything is just gross. Yes, and if you're not doing that, then you feel maybe a little bit more haughty because you're giving speeches or you're thought leading. But then even more people look at that like, man, I don't want to, be waiting for chicken satay in the back of a Radisson hotel to speak at a CLE, or, there's some indignity to it. Can you help our audience think of personal branding, and why would you want to personally work on yourself? I mean, you're talking about training, and you're talking about really living this actualized lifestyle, which Maslow's hierarchy, you're just climbing to the top, and most people are just trying to Netflix and chill and, control their ice cream for breakfast. How do you kind of square this and get people to feel that it isn't this Tony Robbins, like teeth whitening kind of slimy thing? Personal branding, how do you get people active and engaged in this idea of living a better life, or kind of, defining themselves
or building? I mean, I think even just approaching it as something that you build and create. And
why build that building? A lot of people are like, screw that building. I don't want to do that. I'm not a billboard lawyer. I'm not a branded lawyer. I don't do that nasty stuff. And you're like, I don't know what to tell you.
Easiest definition of a brand is your reputation. It is your ability to influence other people. And either you are building a brand on purpose or you're building a brand on accident. So you have a reputation out there that's either been crafted and you've been intentional about it, or it's not, and most likely it's fairly poor. So that's the first kind of perception. And the next thing is marketing. Marketing is everything you do to get new business. So if you take really good care of a client and the client loves you and tells their friend about you, that is a form of marketing. If you go out and give a really great speech and do pro bono work and that gets you more business, that is part of marketing. So marketing is actually a huge umbrella, a huge circus tent, absolutely massive. It includes advertising and click ads, and it includes social media, and it includes client referrals, professional referrals, TV and radio. It's absolutely massive. So marketing is big. Next thing I'll say about branding is this: the number one key to building a personal brand is your specialization. Man who chases 2 rabbits catches none. So you've got to absolutely go after one rabbit and build a reputation around that, which is more or less your kind of area in law. And most of the most high-priced lawyers do one specialty, not 5 or 6. It's the guys at the bottom who are working hand to mouth, who are doing a little bit of everything. It's more taxing. They work more hours. They're constantly creating new systems, doing more and more research, versus the specialists who make more money. So, and finally, I'll say this: brand is all about being authentic. There's nothing about being fake or phony about it. You might be thinking about how you can put your best foot forward, but that's nothing more than, it might be just taking a shower in the morning. We're talking about common sense things here. We're not talking about teeth whitening and hair plugs.
Well, and also the idea of, me and Paul are musicians, we're performing artists, so we're very aware of being on stage in front of people. And you're looking at your hands and you're, what are my hands doing? Oh no, I'm thinking about my hands all of a sudden, and you're not delivering, and you're taken out of authenticity in a quest to present yourself as authentic. And I think if you really pursue this hall of mirrors, you can be easily disillusioned. Once you start questioning yourself, you're wondering what's going on when you're rather just delivering. Do you have something about your speaking? I mean, you've spoken to thousands of people across the world. Speak to performance and how that sort of is maybe that's a good way to judge your authenticity. Or have you ever just been like, oh man, I'm being a fakester right now? Or you speak on that, like, a lot of trial lawyers, are scared to get in front of the jury, So.
Yeah. So the best speaker and author on this topic is Brene Brown. She really does a great job defining authenticity.
Yeah.
And what she basically says, authenticity is being yourself, and the opposite of authenticity is fitting in. And so fitting in is that performance that we try to be to make other people like us. And it really is a very, very narrow difference between the two, because all of us have gone into situations before where our confidence is low, our esteem may not be too high, and we're looking around to others to say, how do I behave in a way that people like me? Which usually does not work. We can all think of examples when we've done that. We can think of other examples where we're feeling really good about ourselves and we walk into a situation and we're natural and we are relaxed and we think we are being ourselves. That's the space we want to be in. So oftentimes a lot of the work on authenticity is done before you show up. It's a lot of the way that your perception of the world, the amount of time you spend probably on the four most important basics of your health that help you when you show up. You really are who you are versus trying to be somebody else.
Peter, brilliant.
Yeah.
More people want to learn more about you. They want to find you online. How can they find you?
So, I am a personal branding guy. And so the easiest way to find me is by going to petermontoya.com. Just like it sounds, petermontoya.com. I was at a retail store one time and I was checking out and a retail clerk asked me my email address and I said petermontoya@petermontoya.com. My 16-year-old daughter was standing next to me and she goes, "Dad, do you ego much?"
We're branded up, kid. We're branded.
Right.
We need it where we're going.
I just thought, I always thought it was just kind of simplicity, but she saw it in an egotistical way. Okay. And then also, I have a program called the High Performance Organization, where we teach leadership skills to top leaders so they can instill a leadership culture, which is a force multiplier. So if you want to grow your organization, whether you have one person or 100 people, by 25% per year, we help convert your organization into a high performance organization. You can find that too at petermontoya.com.
5 questions we ask everyone.
What was the last book you read?
Free Will by Sam Harris.
Number 2, what's your favorite place?
Mexico or anywhere with my wife.
Nice.
Excellent. Good answer.
Good answer. Safe answer.
Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
I am a podcast junkie. I listen to 2 or 3 hours of podcasts a day. Sam Harris is one of them. A new one is Pivot by Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher. I really love that one a lot. And The Daily by the New York Times. Daily, I listen to that one every single day. That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Number 4. The notorious number 4. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Soy sauce.
Right on.
Okay.
Great answer. All right. Last one. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
I will anything with my wife. I will love just sitting, talking to my wife, dinner with my wife, anything. I'm madly love my wife. My wife is a rock star.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonepodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.